So today we have Nick Bastiaansen and Frederic Charton. Frederic Charton comes from a background of engineering in the energy, petrochemical and refining sector, but I will let you talk a bit more later about yourself. And we have Nick Bastiaansen, senior trader Aromatics marketing at Total. So I will also let you explain a bit more about yourself later. So just for the teacher and the students that are following us today, I remind you that you can use the social media to spread the word about this very interesting session that we have today and about all the information that you will get and what you will learn from our two speakers. So you can use Twitter, both STEM Alliance and Scientix account. You can also use the Facebook channel, so the group Science Teachers in Europe, and you can include the STEM Alliance account there when you are using Facebook. So why are we having this type of activity with the STEM Alliance? So Europe's economy is facing an important shortage of STEM professionals, which has a significant impact on employment and productivity in the related industries. And the demand for STEM professional and associated professional is expected to grow by around 8% between now and 2025. So it's a real issue in Europe that there is a lack of young people that are interested in STEM jobs and going into these sectors, basically. So this means that today's society needs more young people to pursue STEM subjects and careers to become a part of a qualified workforce needed in Europe and beyond in the coming years. And for this, we also need motivated and properly trained, well-equipped STEM teachers. That's why it's really important for the project to work with a network of motivated STEM teachers across Europe that will help us prepare and inspire the next generation of researchers and industry professionals. So the STEM Alliance is tackling these fundamental needs through the collaboration between industry partners and ministries of education across Europe. The STEM Alliance brings together 14 companies, which with the ministries of education represented by European Schoolnet, aim to help teachers learn about the different STEM jobs and skills that exist in the industry. So there are three main axes of activities in the STEM Alliance. So the first one is to encourage STEM professionals to go back to schools and to give some career talks, or to also take part in online sessions like we are doing today. The second big action is to advance teacher discovery placement, so it's to send teachers in industry. And finally, we are building knowledge and providing resources and training to teachers and to students. So let me go back to my original question now. How can we help inspire young people to pursue careers in those fields, and how can teachers inspire the future generation of professionals working as scientists and engineers? Today we already have some answers from you through the STEM career and skill of the future scheme of activities. And we are really happy to have our two experts today that will share about their career, which study they undertook before they arrived to their current position, and to give a bit more also of an idea of what it is like on the daily basis to work in this type of industry. So, but before we go ahead, I just want to inform you or remind you, because maybe a lot of you know already, that we have our big campaign, the STEM Discovery Week, coming up at the last week of April. And basically, it's a week to celebrate innovative STEM education and all activities to promote STEM jobs and STEM careers. So we will have a peak of activity at the last week of April, but the idea is to have the whole month of April STEM months, basically, and you are most welcome to participate, and you will find all information through the URL that you can see here. So I will move on now to our... So this is just to give you a few ideas of the stereotypes that sometimes young people can have of what it is to work in the STEM industry. And I think it's better to have some information from professionals that are directly involved there. So let's move on now. And I will start by asking Frederic if you can introduce a bit yourself.
Okay.
Your current position, etc.
So I am 42. I am a chemical engineer, and I'm working since 18 years. I was before my current position as a commercial manager. I was more involved into technical and position within plants, so directly working within industrial environment in France and in Saudi Arabia. So you can see that this kind of job may lead to different places where you can work around the world. Mm-hmm. And since 3 years, so I am commercial manager. So it's opening as well to different kind of job. Nick?
Yes.
Yeah, of course. Please go ahead.
Nick Bastiaansen. I've been working for Total for 10 years. The same as Frederic. I'm not an engineer. I studied economics and started working for Total 10 years ago. In different environments, I started in the HR department and then moved to internal audit, where I audited all of the different Total branches all over the world during 3 years. Lived in Paris for that. Moved back to Brussels, and I am now trading aromatics. So Frederic, who worked as an engineer, producing petrochemicals. At some point when they're produced, they need to be sold and moved around the world. So I am involved in that today.
Great, okay. So we have collected some questions from teachers in advance of this chat. So we had a Padlet where a teacher could send all their questions, and so I'm going to start asking you basically what they're interested to know. So when I say teacher, it's basically teacher that prepare with their students. So it's coming also from young people from secondary school. So maybe Frederic, I can start with you to ask you what a typical working day look like for you. Maybe typical is something a bit special, and you have it's changed a lot. And what do you like in your everyday task? Basically.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, I will discuss more and will be more focused, let's say, on my previous assignment and jobs, and let Nick to discuss about what we are doing in our marketing and sales department. So a typical working day, then it depends of your let's say assignments. When I was in Saudi, it was to participate within a startup of a huge refinery that we have built in that location. So the daily workload was quite heavy. I was used to work, let's say, 6 days per week, because in the Middle East. But let's say that it was required because we had to deliver and to start up within the schedule which has been implemented, and we had to respect this schedule. But let's say that normally you are used to work 5 days per week, and you are used to have your your weekend. I don't want to afraid young people saying that they have to work 6 or 7 days per week. No, no. And then let's say the number of hours per day, it depends. Typical, it's let's say 7:30, 8 hours.
Okay.
And sometimes,
So the normal.
yeah, normal. Normal. And
so would you have like a lot of meetings, or it's like answering emails all day, or
in the startup of the refinery, it was requiring a lot of coordination within the different parts of the plant, because there were let's say plenty of different units who had to start up within let's say a certain order. And you had to organize this startup with different departments, and then you have to coordinate that within some meetings in order to ensure that everything will be done in safe condition and let's say in respect of the environment, because we are not dealing with chocolate. Yeah. We are working with some product coming from refining and petrochemicals, which are such as gasoline or diesel in our daily life, what we are used to use.
And is it, I'm asking a bit more question, but is it international team that you were working with, I imagine? Yes.
Yeah, in Saudi we were, let's say, around 10 different nationalities, with some people coming from US, coming from South America, such as Venezuelan people. There were people from Europe, there were people from India, Pakistan, Asia.
So dealing with a lot of people from different
and Saudi people as well.
Saudi people. Okay. So I'm going to ask you the same question, Nick, now. Okay. What is a typical day at work for you?
So today I'm a trader for Aromatics. So some of the petrochemicals that were produced on sites like Frederic was describing, as we said, need to be sold, need to be marketed, and need to be transported. So my typical day in the morning starts with checking the markets, because the petrochemical markets or petrochemical product market is a global market, which means that prices move overnight. If our market closes in Europe, then Asia opens, and then the US opens, and then we open, etc. So it's a 24-hour circle. So I have colleagues in the US and in Asia as well that monitor their parts of the market. So I will check markets, see what the market has done. Has it gone up? Has it gone down? Secondly, I will check my operations, because we have a team in charge of all the operations, so the vessels that need to load products, that need to move, just to make sure that everything is in order, that there's no problem somewhere. And then thirdly, check whether all of our production sites are working as they should. So we have production sites all over Europe. We have a big one in Antwerp, we have one in Normandy in France, etc. Just to make sure that there are no hiccups, that everything is producing as it should. Once a week, we also have a conference call with our colleagues in the US and Asia to determine whether there are any arbitrage opportunities to move product from Europe to the US, or from Europe to Asia, or Asia to the US, because prices are different in each region. And the rest of my day, I will spend mainly calling my counterparts, my suppliers, my clients, and trying to sell the products that we produce.
Okay.
It's a typical day.
It's a lot of interaction with different parts of the world.
Yes, indeed.
So maybe my next question is, how did you arrive to this current position, basically, and what did you study, and like how much and what one needs to study, basically? Did you study a lot? We can start with you,
yes. So I'm French. I follow all my studies in France. After a secondary school diploma, I followed a chemical engineering path through university and engineering school. And then I have, after 5 years, so around 23 years old, achieved my studies with chemical engineering diploma, equivalent to a Master of Science level.
Okay.
So it took roughly 5 to 6 years after secondary school to achieve this kind of studies.
And how many positions did you have before being at your current position?
Today?
Yeah.
Roughly 4 or 5 different
Okay.
positions. Yeah.
Okay. Always in the same sector? Or?
No, in energy first, working for big European company in Paris, and then I moved to Total. So when we are working as an engineer, or we are not always linked to a unique company. So according to the different opportunities that you have in your life, you can change the company for who you are working.
Yeah. Okay. And from your side, Nick, what did you?
So I studied economics and mathematics before going to university, where I studied applied economics. So I'm Belgian, so in the Belgian school system, that was the choice that I made. Not an engineer, but ended up as my first job within Total, which is a big oil and gas company. So a lot of engineers were there, but they also need some non-engineers to do some part of the job. I started very funnily in HR departments at Total, so I was in charge of compensation and benefits. Then moved to internal audit, and currently find myself in a commercial position.
So there is quite a lot of opportunities to move from department to department.
Yes, and that's, I think, one of the main advantages in companies like us, ourselves, is that you are not expected to spend your whole career in the same job or in the same department. It's not, Frederic is the perfect example, it's not because you're an engineer that you're supposed to spend the whole career on the field doing an engineer's job.
Exactly.
So is it encouraged also from the human resource department?
Yes, it's something that's actively promoted. So we have a career management department within HR that is focused only on making sure that people's careers are managed. So typically, every 3 to 5 years, people will move in our company.
Okay.
You're not forced to, but it's highly encouraged in order to have other departments benefit from, for example, in our department where we sell petrochemicals, it's very valuable to have an engineer as Frederic in our department, because when there's a problem on a unit, he immediately can identify what the exact problem is. We can challenge the people on the site. And for me, as a non-engineer, that's very important because I will not necessarily have all the technical knowledge that is needed.
Okay.
And so vice versa as well. If I will go to a plant one day, I will know about the difficulties that commercial people have in certain aspects. So that's something that's really highly encouraged and promoted within the company, which I think is appreciated by the people because you don't have the feeling that you're boxed into something for the rest of your career.
Which is really important for the motivation.
Which is really important because a lot of my friends, they end up having to move to different companies to experience different things. And the nice thing in our company is that you can move within the company to different departments and different jobs. So it's one big advantage.
Okay, so it's for people that like to have challenges and to develop constantly. It's a nice
skills and knowledge. Exactly.
And I think it's nice for the students that maybe are doubting about whether they want to specialize in engineering or STEM in a STEM direction, that they're limiting themselves. I think they shouldn't be afraid of that because there's plenty of companies out there who will allow you to do different stuff all along your career.
Maybe this leads me to the next question, which is basically what you think are the most important skills to, well, I guess that there are many different departments and different roles, but what do you think are like the key skills that are important?
The first one is a lifelong learner. I mean, because when you are engineer or with another kind of studying path, it's important to have the skill to along your career to learn and always to learn about something and to be curious within the diversity of the different jobs that Total, our company, is able to provide. And when I decided to join from a, let's say, technical job to a business activity, it was a big step. But as I like to learn, I was curious to move to this kind of job in order to discover something different. So I think the best important is for myself is to be happy to learn all along your career.
Okay.
I think flexibility is very important. As you were saying, we are a global company, so you need to have a certain flexibility in terms of geographical mobility. As Frederic said, he moved to Saudi Arabia a couple times. I've moved to Paris and come back. It's very unlikely that we will spend the rest of our career in Brussels, where we are now, because we have so many different sites and so many different opportunities, and the world changes. We have today less European activities, more international ones. It might change again one day. But I think if you are not flexible, then that's a bit complicated. So geographical mobility, I think, is important. And also flexibility, as we said, in terms of different type of jobs that you would at some point need to be doing. So if you're focused on one specific thing and want to do that for the rest of your life, that's possible, but it kind of limits the opportunities that you will have.
So for, let's say, for people that have a STEM background, it's not enough, let's say, to focus only on the STEM skills, but it's really important also to develop the soft skills.
Exactly. Not only to be a problem solver or to be innovative, you have to develop other skills. One important as well is communication, to have the ability to communicate with people, because nowadays you have, as Nick was saying, a lot of counterparts, a lot of interaction with the different departments that we are working with. When you are, as I was on the site, you are working with some experts, you are working with within the group with some process people, you are working with safety people, you are working with plenty of different jobs and positions that you have to communicate. And when you are taking part in the operation of a plant or petrochemical or a refinery, it's very important for safety to have as good as possible a good communication. It's avoid to make some mistakes and to create some accidents, which could be sometimes dramatic.
Okay.
And it's also
important. Risk management, to manage the pressure as well is very important. So communication is one skill very important, to say what do you think, what could be the best thing to continue to deliver, to produce within good condition.
So also in our business, it's a 24/7 business. The unit never stops. It's supposed to never stop. So a petrochemical unit or a refinery always runs. So you will have teams that will take over in shifts and that will take over. So it's also very rare that, at 6 o'clock when you stop your job, that you can just stop it and not think about it. Because if something happens, you will get a call and this happened, and you immediately get sucked into it. So it's very rare to have a 9-to-5 job strictly like that.
Okay. Yeah. So, but can I ask you, what is the most satisfying aspect of your job, like of your career?
It was to participate and to be involved in the startup of this refinery in Saudi Arabia, because when you have the achievement, the startup, everything is going as smooth as possible within good condition. And then you have the first droplet of your product that you were supposed to produce and to deliver. You are very satisfied, because that means that you managed to achieve your target within the best condition.
Okay, so basically being at the very beginning of a new project and being part of the whole development until the result is tangible. And,
it's important to be involved within a technical career in such a kind of job. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's indeed the interesting part, is that we have so many projects starting up. When one ends, another one starts up, and usually at a given point we will have 15 to 20 different projects. Just because the company is so diverse as well, we have exploration and production activities, we have refining and chemicals, we have distribution and marketing activities, we have more and more new energies, we are solar panels, wind energy. So the world is changing very quickly, and in this industry you need to change very quickly as well. So we need to anticipate future needs, which makes it interesting to work for a petrochemical company, because something new happens every day. And a new project starts, and today it's here, tomorrow it's somewhere else, and that's what's...
So basically there's no risk to be bored in your...
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Not at all.
Good.
Yes.
So maybe I have a question that is more targeted at Frederic. What do you think is the most important for a student in high school if you want to become an engineer?
I will answer with something that people will not be happy. It's mathematics, I think.
Okay.
Because because with mathematics you have some skills that you are developing, such as problem solver, and it's important when you are engineer to be able to solve any problem that you have in front of you, and not to stuck with this problem and to let it as it is.
So an analytical
analytical
mindset,
and I think that mathematics is the discipline in which you can develop this kind of skill.
And is it a topic that you liked when you were in school?
Honestly, I realized at the end of my path that it was a tool required in any other part of the job.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. But basically, we can say that we have some nice resources to we are offering to teachers to make math more like interesting and attractive too. There are some games also to so and if you understand also how useful it is in the context of your future career, I think it's quite important. So I both ask you what you liked most about your job. Maybe I can ask you now, what is the biggest challenge, let's say, in your where you already gave some elements of answer, talking about the stress, sometimes the long hours. Maybe we can start with Nick. What is the most challenging?
I think for people working on the industrial part as engineers, I'm going to talk a little bit for Frederic, but you can correct me if I'm wrong. I think the main objective today is safety. I think that what everyone in the company wants is to go home safe at the end of the day. So that, for our company at least, should always be the priority. And I think that's one of the biggest challenges industrially working on the site, is to make sure that everyone goes home, not only the people that work for Total, but the people that work for contractors, etc. Because you have so many things going on the site. I don't remember how many people at some point were working in Saudi Arabia at the same time.
But at the same time, within the construction of the site, there were more than 35,000 of people within the same location, same time. So you need a lot of coordination and to survey all these people working all together.
Yeah, so you can imagine that that's a big challenge when you have a site and 35,000 people are working at the same time, the same day on the site. Then making sure they all go home without injuries is one big challenge.
The impact can be quite important.
Yes, it can be, and it's one of the most important KPIs within the company as well. And everything will be linked to it. The results, even people's bonuses, will be linked to how safe a site operates and how safe the group. So that's definitely, and I think that's the same for all the other petrochemical players, because the products are so dangerous to handle that that's one very important challenge. I think the second one is probably reliability, something that sometimes we struggle with. As we said, it's a 24/7 industry, and when the site doesn't run, that is the most important economic loss we have, because it's not producing as it should. So I think that's probably the second challenge, and everyone involved takes part in that challenge, because it can be on the industrial side, it can be because we as a marketing department are not selling fast enough, the vessel's not there to load the product, which causes a backlog. So it's a whole circle of people who are involved, making sure that operations go smoothly. I would say that those are the big challenges.
I would add one, which is as well important, is the environment respect, and to limit as much as possible our impact. As a global energy company, we have to manage our system as well to limit as much as possible any loss of product in the environment, and it's important to survey and to manage this risk. But it's totally linked with safety. When you are operating on a safe mode, everything is going smooth.
Okay. Maybe a bit more personal question, but having a career in the type of department industry where you are, how is it to have a balance between private life and professional life?
That's a good question.
I think it's a very important element for young people nowadays in their choice of career, so that's why I'm asking this question.
Yes, I understand. We can definitely see some sort of a shift, I think, between generations. Because when I started, and I'm not that old yet, I'm 35, turned Saturday, 35. It's something that was not really on our minds, because we wanted to have a career, we wanted to develop, etc. We were not really going into a job interview saying, oh, but by the way, I want to, have a good work-life balance. We, at the time, felt that was not an appropriate question. I think young people these days do. I think it's more and more important, and I think it's a challenge for industry companies who are used to having a more classical work environment where that type of question wasn't asked. I think it's a challenge for the future for companies like ours to try and accommodate that, because young people apparently do have big aspirations in terms of a work-life balance that is in a certain way, and I think that's a big challenge. I don't think we have the right answers to it, because as we were saying, in our industry, it's very difficult to say, well, I'm just going to go on holiday for a week and then I'll see what happened when I come back. That's very, very complicated. We have backups. We have people who are making sure in the weekends that operations run smoothly. So I don't have a clear-cut answer for it. I think it's difficult in petrochemicals to say, I want to, go home at 5 and then not think about it anymore. I think that's complicated. That's an honest answer.
But it's good to be transparent about it.
Especially when you are working on the plant. As Nick was saying, our activities are working 24 hours, 7 days, all the year. And when you are at home, you are supposed to be called in case of any concern, any issue on the plant. You have some kind of organization where you are on duty during 1 week and supposed to be called and reachable, exactly. But you can have some rest when you are not on duty on board for this kind of organization. You can have your weekend, you can have your evening and sleep quietly.
No, I mean, so it's a job with like you're passionate about it, but it's required quite a lot of your personal investment.
Exactly, and when you have to invest yourself during 1 week where you are supposed to be called during the night, you know it, you sign for it, I should say, and then you are very happy when you finish a week without any issue.
Yeah. Okay. Good. We have some questions coming in the chat box here. I will start by the one from at the top.
Okay.
What if you are a more introvert person? Could you still be a successful engineer?
Yeah, why not? Yeah. Just, I'm sure that there are some people in our kind of companies who are more introvert person. There are, I don't want to describe a kind of person, but there are some people who are less comfortable to speak in front of a lot of people or to manage. We can offer some positions such as process engineer or expert job where you are used to speak and to work with a limited number of people. So it's not close to any kind of personality.
Indeed, I agree. It's definitely not impossible. I think it just opens up more possibilities if a person who is introvert by nature. I think it's important that they try throughout their study career, try and maybe work on that a little bit to become a bit more extrovert, because it will help them get the initial job. I think once you work as an engineer, there's no reason why if you're an introvert you would be less successful or something. I just think it's an important aspect that people, the companies will look for when they hire people. Because they will not look only at you as an engineer, but they will say, okay, maybe he'll be an engineer for 10 years, but after that, we still have to give him a job for 30 more years. So, and then when you're limited as saying, okay, I only want to do engineering and I'm not, a big talker, etc., that might not be helpful when you're trying to get a job.
So what is interesting also in your answer is that I see that, so basically the type of industry where you work has a long-term vision for career of
It is, and maybe that's typical for our company, but I think it's a bit typical for the whole industry, is that we try to offer people not a job but a career. And I think we're examples of that. I've only worked for Total for 10 years. Frederic has spent a big amount of his career, 18 years. And especially if I compare to some of my friends who've done the same studies as I did, they're probably at their 4th or 5th employer already. After 10 or 15 years of career, because each time they want to do something different, and then their company is like, but we hired you for this, so we want you to keep doing this. They want to do something else, so they're a bit forced to move companies where we can do it.
Good. And we have another question that we had also received in advance. It's basically about the place for women in this type of industry.
Very good question.
So maybe we can start by the department where you work now, and in general in your company, and even maybe when you studied engineering.
When I was studying, I should say it was 1/3 of the number of students were women, and I know that nowadays it's more 50-50, half of each, and it's excellent to have this kind of mixité in order to work. When I was in Saudi, it was difficult to imagine for a young local guy to be managed by a woman, but I had as manager a woman, and I would say that she was as a normal manager. There were no concern with her. There is no limitation for women, and in our company they implement a program, a kind of network for women in order to mentoring and to develop their path within the company. So
I would say that women who choose to be petrochemical engineers have an advantage instead of a disadvantage these days, because a lot of international companies like ours are struggling to find enough women. And that's mainly because not enough women end up doing the studies that are required. So I think the bottleneck starts at university, at high school and university level, where I think statistics show that only 1 out of 4 people that graduate as an engineer are women. Our company objective is to have 50-50. So, but to do that 50-50, we're already starting from 25% instead of 50%. So
already there is a lack of young people going for this kind of
Yes.
study path, but and in this small number, not enough
Right.
girls. Basically.
So I would say that if you're a woman and you want to be a petrochemical engineer, I would say that once you complete your studies, you will have, I would say, no problem finding a job, because a lot of companies will look for women as petrochemical engineers, because there's a lot of objectives. And again, as Frederic said, our company promotes through different types of projects women in petrochemicals, and we struggle mainly because there's not enough.
Okay, so at the moment in your department there would be more.
So today, to give you an example, I was just doing quick calculation while Frederic was talking. I think in our operations there's 5 out of, well, I would say 5 women working there out of 12, 13 people, so a bit less than half.
Not too bad.
On the commercial part, there's 2 out of 5. Frederic has one female colleague, and of the 3 traders, there's 1 female as well. So yeah, close to parity. So we're not that far from it, but if you would go to an industrial site, those numbers would drop a little bit.
Okay.
But it's definitely something that if you're a woman, don't think that because you're a woman you will not get a job as a petrochemical engineer. I would say it's the exact opposite. If you graduate as a petrochemical engineer and you're a woman,
The companies are looking for
yes,
women
for
to
sure.
hire.
I would be more concerned if I was a man these days than a woman.
Okay. So it's basically still at school and university level that
Yes.
We have to fight stereotypes.
Yes.
That women shouldn't go for this type of careers. Okay, I think there is a specific question for Frederic. So were there some things that you were surprised about, you didn't expect when you started working as an engineer, when you finished your study basically and you started? Because sometimes when you are fresh from university, you don't have a clear idea about how.
I was surprised to use only a part of all the knowledge that you accumulate after 5 years of studies.
Okay.
No,
So
that's funny
spent.
because when you are studying, you are learning a lot of topics, a lot of things, and when I started to work. I was surprised to see that I was not using at all some big formulas that I was learning several years before. So that's something very funny, because when you are students, you are learning, working, big formulas, big things, and when you start to have to work, you have to be pragmatic, and then you are using only plus and minus on your.
But maybe there are also something that when you start working, something that you didn't learn at university, but you are also with the experience
and you have to develop skills, as we said and already said, such as communication, such as team player. Because you are not working alone, you are working with plenty of people. In our department, currently, we are not working only with our customers or suppliers. We are working with lawyers, we are working with shipping people involved into logistics. We are working with people on the site where we are selling their goods. So you have to develop this kind of ability. Team player, I should say, is another skill to develop.
Yeah, it's definitely something. I think that probably in the first 5 years when you start your job, I think you probably learn as much as in the first and the 5 years when you study, because there's so many new things that come in a different way. But
maybe I wanted to ask a bit more about, because you were mentioning the very international aspect of your job. Basically, wanted to know how you deal with that in your daily work. Like you were mentioning, for example, that you have a lot of calls with different parts of the world. And,
So it's true. I mean, I think we are present in 138 countries. So that's a lot. Unfortunately, oil and gas, as we always say, is not available in the most easy countries in the world, I would say, not the most peaceful always. because except for the North Sea and Norway, there's really not that much oil and gas to be explored in Europe. So a lot of times we have to deal with an environment that's not so easy. For example, in Total, as far as exploration and production is concerned, the main countries for us are Angola and Nigeria, which are not always the most stable countries. We have a lot of projects in Russia. We, Total not, but other oil majors will be involved in the USA or South America. So it's definitely a global business. As far as petrochemicals is concerned, so we have a big platform in the Middle East. We do have Antwerp, which is a big refinery and a petrochemical hub. We have Normandy in France. So on the petrochemical side, it's a bit more European-centered, I would say, than on the exploration and production side. So yeah, it's very global. It's a business that's also global. Once you start selling these things, you get into clients who are everywhere. So we ship product to South Africa, to Asia, to the US, basically everywhere in the world.
So global in all aspects.
Yes.
Yes.
And when I was in Saudi, I was used to work within a multicultural environment. So you are working with different cultures that you have to take into account. This is important for a goodwill and to work in a good condition. This is important to learn about anybody.
I agree. Yeah, that's maybe something that is underestimated sometimes, is the big cultural difference between people, especially when you're doing business. Is it's very difficult, very different to do business with someone from Asia compared to someone from the US, for example.
So that's something you learn by doing.
It's something that you
doing.
learn, and I think that I would suggest students to try and be familiar with that already during their student years. Try and visit other countries, try and travel, try and do a student job in a different part of the world. I think that's very enriching. And
Erasmus program are very as a program is very useful for that.
Yeah, there are some university programs. There is Erasmus, but also I don't know, some business school that are sending students to China.
My engineering school is linked with some foreign school. We are receiving people from Asia, from China mainly, some Middle East as well. So they are used to receive and to teach to foreign people. They are linked with German university as well. So this mix help to discover the other culture. Exactly.
Okay, we have another question here, and basically, in what direction is the petrochemical sector going? How do you imagine the industry in 10 to 20 years' time, when students will get there, basically?
For sure. For sure, we will continue to produce from oil and gas petrochemical goods. Companies such as us is working on recycling of on the different alternatives to produce petrochemicals from a biosource. So there is still a need of petrochemical products from polymers, plastics. They are in our common days used, and I think the next generation within 10 or 20 years will have to deal with maybe some more creative and innovative subject than us. So the challenge is in front of us is to continue to produce this kind of goods. We are using daily a smartphone. It's plenty of product coming from petrochemistry. So I do not imagine that within 10 or 20 years we will be able to do something different for communication. I mean.
I agree. I think that people, if they're in a room and they would take away everything that is in some way linked to petrochemicals, there wouldn't be that much left in the rooms. So I don't think in 10 or 20 years petrochemicals has completely disappeared. I think it will be different, as Frederic said, because there's more and more pressure, because we do, of course, have an impact on climate. We need oil and gas as a source, as a main source today, to develop petrochemical products. We are constantly looking for alternatives. For some processes there are, for some we haven't yet. So I think that's a challenge, and that will continue for the next 10, 20, 50 years to try and replace oil and gas by other alternatives, and they will come at some point. But the petrochemicals industry as such, where we would produce polyethylene, polystyrene, all of the petrochemical products, I think that will exist. It's just a question of the feedstock that will be diversified in order to have a less or better ecological footprint. I think that will be a big challenge for the future.
Which leads us basically to the next question we have from Elena. How does your company address ecological issues or environmental issues?
2 years ago, after the Paris conference on the climate, our CEO, Patrick, decided to implement this constraint in all our projects. That means that if today we are designing a future plant somewhere in the world, we are taking in aspects, in all the aspects of the design, this constraint, and maybe a higher constraint, because 3 degrees is let's say a big constraint for the different industries, and we are targeting this level, this target.
Yeah, I think that's we cannot operate in a world and not be concerned by the environment. It's impossible. It's probably impossible. It was probably possible 50 or 100 years ago. Today, that's not possible. We do not hide the fact that our industry has an ecological footprint. When you explore oil and gas, then yes, you do. The question becomes indeed to try and limit it as much as we can. And as Frederic said, to take it into account when we have new projects. We do, as well as a company, invest quite a bit of money into alternative energy sources. As we said, we have acquired SunPower, which is a big producer of solar panels. We have invested in Saft, which is a battery maker. We have bought Lampiris in Belgium, which is electricity distribution. So we are more and more diversifying our portfolio from classical oil and gas assets into a broader spectrum, because we know that for the future the industry will move towards those alternatives. It's not ready yet to just say, okay, we forget all about that and we're just going to do sun and wind, and that's today is not possible. It's a transition that will take time, but we are preparing the future of the company for that.
So basically, from an economical point of view for the company, it's really important also to diversify.
And the impact and the visibility that oil and gas company has, it's important to limit as much as possible this ecological impact.
And you can also see it with some of the sites, with what we did, for example, in Charton, which is a site where Frederic used to work. You can explain a bit in detail. There was a process that was no longer economically viable, and we changed it.
We moved from let's say petrochemistry activities to polymer activities. So we stopped to produce with old process, and we transformed the site, and we managed the transition to produce polymer. So the site now is supplied from external sources, but still produce polymers for daily objects in our life. So it's important to mention as well, within the world we are not applying let's say the local laws when we are building in Saudi Arabia, Middle East, the plant. The rules and the laws of these countries are such comparable. You can compare them to what we are used to see here in Europe. I was surprised to, and I have to admit that their constraints were at the same level than what we are used to see here in Europe. So it's sometimes easy to say that China is a source of pollution, but they have to follow as well some rules, and they are putting more and more constraint on the industry. That this is as well a challenge that we have to to work with.
Okay. I have here one more question that was sent in advance to us.
Okay.
And I think that might be a concern of teachers as well. So how can a parent encourage their child to pursue engineering? And do you think there are some activity that parents could do with their children to encourage them to go in STEM and maybe more particularly in engineering?
As young as possible. I know that I have a daughter. She's very interested into scientist matter, and there are some museum scientists that you can visit with some experience, some labs where you can do some chemistry. So it may something be useful to develop this kind of interest in young kids. And for I would say that for a teenager, it's important to be interested within this kind of path, career, maybe to knock at the door in order to visit when there are sometimes some open days within the different industrial place, to do not hesitate to visit a plant and to ask some question and to.
So maybe teacher could
meet careers.
I think a lot of teachers are doing that, but having teachers that bring their class
for sure.
to visit.
I think we are always ready to open up our plans to, and we do it a couple times a year to show people what we are doing, people who live in the neighborhood, so they get an idea of what we're doing, but also people who are interested in working in the industry to try and walk around the refinery, get some explanation of how the process works and what are the final products. Because I think a lot of kids, and I was among them, they do not necessarily realize when they think about petrochemicals and refineries, they think about gasoline in a car. That's the thing that comes to mind. But if you look at all the different products that are derived from petrochemicals, it's huge. All of the different plastics, all of this stuff, all comes from petrochemicals. So I think it's very interesting to let people know what it is exactly that we do, and that's what we're trying to do.
I don't think we have more questions for now, so I would like to thank you a lot for all the information and for your time also. I want to also mention the fact that this chat was co-organized with the European Petrochemical Association. Yes. So you are part of the young EPCA think tank. Yes. And also because you mentioned several times that the petrochemical industry produce actually products that we can find around us every day and in many different sectors, in the medical sector, So I just want to mention that the European Petrochemical Association has produced a number of films about that, and that teachers are free to use. So there's, for example, chemistry all around us, I think, that explain well this thinking. So it can be a nice introduction resource to use to speak about petrochemical industry and in the classes. So there are short movies. And actually, this chat was recorded, so we are going to upload the recording of this session of today on our website, and we will provide also a number of resources that teachers can use. So I would like to thank again all the teachers that connected through the chat today. We hope it was nice and useful for you. You will be able to find also the presentation on the website, and we invite you to actively take part of the STEM Discovery coming up also. So many thanks to all of you, and I think we are going to close the chat session now.